Bismillah wa salatu wa salam ala Rasulillah. So there's a YouTube channel where a sister she asked the men in her audience, and I'll post the link in the description of this video. She asks, why are men apprehensive or hesitant to marry women who are single mothers or widows? And the answer to that is very simple. When men marry such women, particularly the single mothers, right? But women who's a widow and she has no children, okay, it's not as much of an issue. But women who are single mothers, she's been married before, or came from Jahiliyyah, she had a boyfriend or whatever, now she has children, and she's looking to get married. From the man's perspective, marrying these type of women, men potentially have more to lose than they have to gain. Right? So in marrying these women, they could potentially lose more than they have to gain. There's a high risk of that. So why would anybody do that, right? It doesn't make any sense. If I told you to do anything, to go and try something, I say you're more likely to fail than you are to succeed. And even if you are to succeed, it's not necessarily something that is outstanding in terms of your success, right? So this is the answer, in short. Men will lose more potentially by marrying a single woman who has children than he will lose by marrying a woman who has not been married before, or a woman who does not have children. Now, why is that? In marrying a woman with children, there's a lot of baggage there that comes with it that just adds, compounds, increases the amount of stress that is going to be in the relationship. So now he has to deal with not only the stress of dealing with a woman, but he has to find a way to deal with her children, right? Because the woman by herself, she might be adaptable, may or may not be adaptable to being under the husband in terms of under his authority. But now the children, they may or may not have an issue with that. In fact, there's a high likelihood that they might have an issue with that. A new man who's not their father, being with their husband, being with their mother rather, and living in his household. So that there's a new set of rules. There's new ways to interact, to understand each other, to communicate. And then there's the other issue of the ex-husband, right? The ex-husband might be a source of drama and conflict, depending on how he interacts with his children or interacts with his ex-wife. So now the new husband now has to deal with a lot, right? And I don't think most women appreciate that. I think they just take it for granted. I know it's no big deal. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy, right? As they say, it's something trivial to them. But no, it's actually a great responsibility that men should avoid, right? Except under rare circumstances. Because you don't want to take on more responsibility than you can bear, right? You end up oppressing yourself, and oppression is haram, even if it's on yourself. So it's better to avoid these situations where these women are like that and they have these children. Because I know typically the natural instinct in men is to come in and save the day, to be the hero, to be her knight on a white horse, and to come in a knight in shining armor and save the day and save her children, save her. But brothers, you're not a knight in shining armor. You're not a hero. You're a slave of Allah. And you have to know your limitations. So the only circumstances in which I think men should marry these types of women is if the man is really well established. Ideally, he should be financially sound and not working for someone and he has maybe, working check to check. You know, if he loses his job, then everything falls apart. Or the money that he saved up will be consumed in a short period of time. No, he should have multiple sources of incomes and assets that are revenue generating. He should own property, own a business, et cetera, et cetera. Because it's going to be a financial burden now to take on this woman and her child. And typically, the ex-husband, the woman is estranged from him. And if they're not estranged, then financially, there's a risk that he's not going to be helpful. Maybe because he simply can't, or maybe because he's deliberately trying not to help out. So rather than put oneself in such a situation, and such a weighty financial burden, it's better to avoid this situation again. Unless, again, you have the financial means to sustain and absorb this type of consumption of your wealth and your time and your health, because it's going to be stressful more times than not. There are rare occasions that it works, but those are the exception and not the rule. And in fact, moreover, and most importantly, is from Islam to marry the virgin or the woman who hasn't been married before. All right? That's the ideal. And then, depending on the circumstances, marry women who have already had children. Because the Sahabas did this, but the Prophet ﷺ, from his own mouth, encouraged the Sahaba to seek out marrying women who had not been married before. All right? But then obviously as there is war, the men, when they go out to fight in the battles and they die, they leave women behind who have children and they need to be married. Actually, but this brings me to another point, that marrying these type of women is a lot easier when you live in an Islamic environment where both parents are present, and even the ex-husband is also present, where the state or the authority can hold everyone accountable. So in regards to maintenance, the ex-husband can be held accountable for his children. And moreover, in regards to child custody, the woman can be held accountable, because in such situations where the woman has children and the children are of a certain age, I think above the age of 7 or 8, and particularly if they're girls, they go, according to Islamic Sharia, the girls go with the father in such cases when the mother remarries. But in the West, typically these modern women, even if they converted to Islam, they're totally against that part of Islam, right? They want to hold on to the child until they're 21 and continue collecting child support, or even if they're not collecting child support, they want to hold on to the child just to harm the ex-husband, right? Because they have some sort of a grudge or ill feelings towards the ex-husband and they want to hurt him. So they use the children to do that. Whereas if they were all living in a Muslim society wherein Sharia was practiced, then the authorities would come in and say, no, sister, sorry, you cannot continue to hold the children. This is the right of the husband, or the ex-husband rather, to have his children come with him since you're getting remarried. And this is best for obvious reasons. Children go through stages where they need one parent more than another. When they're very young, they need the mother more than they need the father. But as they start getting into the age of discernment and maturity, in their as they approach the age of 10, between 7 and 10, and they get to the teenage years, they really need the father. And this is an integral part of their development. And women who prevent their children from having access to their fathers, by deliberate means, by moving far away or making up stories about him, so that the authorities have to go through a lot of bureaucracy in order to verify her claims, and during that time, the father is estranged. He's kept away from the children, so on and so forth. These type of things, it's very, very sad, and ultimately it's harming the children, which is a proof again that these women who do that, they don't really love the children, or I'll put it this way: they hate the ex-husband more than they love the children, because if they love the children more than they hate the ex-husband, they would say, no problem. It's time for you to go with your father, as long as he wants you, and he's go ahead. But sadly, this is not the case for most women. It's very, very rare, particularly in the West, because in the West, everything is feminist, and the women get everything. 90%, 95% of the judgments, the rulings go in the favor of the women, and the men have to are left by the wayside without their children. But at any rate, that's the reason why for men it's not recommended to marry these type of women. So I hope that answers the question to that sister, and her link, like I said, will be posted in the description of this email. If anyone else has questions, needing advice, feel free to send an email to muslimadvicechannel@gmail.com. I almost forgot. This is. I'd also like to address the opposite. Single fathers. So when you have fathers who are divorced, and for whatever reason the children are with them, actually the advice is pretty much the same. I think women who are virgins should also avoid marrying these men, or women who have no children should avoid marrying these type of men. The reason being is that women do not know, or being a step parent, number one, is very, very difficult, right? And you don't know how you're going to be as a parent unless you're actually in it, unless you actually become a parent. So your parenting approach, your parenting philosophy, your parenting practices may differ significantly from what those children might be used to, right? So I'm talking from the perspective of a woman who's marrying a man who has children. So you marrying into such a situation, the children may resent you and have animosity towards you based on how you approach parenting. And another thing I forgot to mention is that there may be jealousy from the children in regards to, jealous feelings from the children in regards to their father or their mother being with a new partner. And there may be jealousy from the new partner in regards to the children. They may be jealous of the children and how the mother interacts and deals with the children. So all these things are normal, but as a first marriage, you don't have experience, you have no children, but you're going to marry into such a situation. I think this type of situation in particular, is very difficult, and one can end up oppressing oneself as well as oppressing the other members of the family because of one's inability to cope with the stress in such situations. So what's the solution then? The solution is for single mothers or single fathers to marry people, for the men who are single and have children, to marry a woman who is older, more mature, and may have experience being a parent. Maybe her child has grown up, her children have grown up, and they've moved on. They're adults now. Or marry a woman who simply can't have children, really can't have children, not women who may have a medical issue that can be solved with medical intervention. Now I'm talking about women who really cannot have children, all right? So they might be a candidate for a potential spouse. and for women who are looking to get married, women who have single mothers, the men that they should marry are men who are already married, meaning they have one or more wives. And like I said earlier, he should be well established financially. The reason I say he should already be married and have one or more wives existing is because it will reduce the stress that he's experiencing, because he won't have to deal with you every day. Right? I'm just making it plain and simple. If you have children and you're looking to get married to a man, it's going to be stressful for him because he has to deal with you, and he has to deal with the children, and very likely he has to deal with the ex-husband. But if you marry a man who already has one or two wives, you only have to see him every other day or every other 2 or 3 days, however the arrangement is set up. And therefore, the stress that you bring to his life will be greatly decreased because of those issues and interactions. I know this is going to sound, it sounds somewhat cold, but that's just the reality. I'm being practical, and we have to look at this logically and practically and use the resources that we have in a way that facilitates a beneficial outcome for everyone. So those of you who are against polygamy, you have to just get over it and realize that it's a solution, a legitimate solution to a problem, a real world problem. And that marriage is not something that is always peaches and cream and rainbows and stars and unicorns. It's a mix of that as well as a lot of stress. Especially when you blending families like that. The stress is just compounded. So we have to anticipate that and deal with it accordingly beforehand. We must do the due diligence in order to mitigate the risk, mitigate the stress, alleviate the stress that is inevitable. So that's that. So I think I mentioned everything. Again, if you want advice on any topic, send it to Muslim Advice Channel at gmail.com.